Like, I'm kind of nervous to pick against Chris Beard and Texas Tech. I realize he doesn't have the people that he had last year. He just doesn't have the players. Remember, they went all the way to the title game and almost won the thing. But Chris Beard coaches tough, fundamental, sound defense. And if they can knock down a few shots, Texas Tech will still be a pain. Yes, you'll probably beat the Red Raiders eventually, but you're going to have to fight for it. They're not going to go away easily. And usually, Texas Tech can knock down some free throws. Always be careful of that. The last coach that you have to be wary of betting against, and it is an old faithful one because I really don't like Michigan State this year. I like point guard Cassius Winston. I like big man Xavier Tillman at times, but they just haven't found a whole lot else throughout the season. They really, really need another scorer. But Tom Izzo, as he usually does, is forcing this Michigan State team to improve. They will rebound. They will play defense. So they just might end up getting more shots than you do. And we're starting to see he is developing freshman forward Malik Hall. He's starting to step up a little bit. Still not big on Sparty, but Izzo is great. He's hard to bet against. We finish up our early March Madness preview by taking a look at some teams that if they are in your bracket, maybe they are going to play your favorite team. I'll just tell you right now, I'm sorry. Now, to be fair, these 4 teams, I don't even know if they're all going to make it to the dance. Some of them still have some work to do, but if they do get in, you don't want to see them as a future opponent because they're going to be a pain. And I will start with the team that I think should worry everyone in the country. And I am talking about the defending national champions. Yes, I realize Virginia has lost 7 or 8 games this year. So, hey, Virginia, they're not the team they used to be. They're not like last year. Yeah, except head coach Tony Bennett, he is getting this group to figure things out. Virginia has won 8 in a row, and in those games, they have had wins against Duke. They have beaten Louisville. Now, they're probably going to get like a 5 or a 6 seed. If I am like a 1 or a 2, I do not want to be in the same bracket with Virginia because not only are they good, not only are they tough and well coached, they were just there last year. Some of those kids are back. They have that big game experience. I don't want to see Virginia in my bracket. They're going to be very, very tough. Now, if you've listened to the dose, you know kind of my love-hate relationship with the Pac-12 in that I don't really love it and I more kind of hate it because it's just not very good. We like to point and laugh at the Pac-12 quite a bit. But I will say this, the rest of the country, you might want to hope that UCLA doesn't make it because head coach Mick Cronin, they kind of got started slow and I'm still not fully in on the UCLA Bruins, but they're at least very scrappy. And the guy that is impressive to me is point guard Tiger Campbell. We know you have to have good guards in March Madness. Sometimes Tiger Campbell will drive you crazy, but he can also make a game-winning clutch play. I don't think UCLA can contend or anything, but I wouldn't want to play them because they're just going to be a pain. They're starting to figure things out at UCLA. They would be a very, very tough team to see. We talked a little bit earlier about Gonzaga being in the West Coast Conference. Yes, the West Coast isn't great, but don't forget, there are a couple of other teams over there. And one of them you would be wise to try to avoid is the BYU Cougars. I don't want them in my bracket. For one, the BYU Cougars team is made up of guys that are 30 years old because they go on their Mormon missions. And then when they're done, they come home and play. They're not 18 and 19-year-olds. These are grown men. Oh, and by the way, this group at BYU, they are grown men that can flat out play. They have beaten Gonzaga. They have some size, and man, can they shoot it from deep. BYU is knocking down 42% of their three-point attempts. That leads the nation. You might outplay Brigham Young, but if they're hitting those threes, you still might end up losing. Because again, 3 counts more than 2. I don't want to see BYU on my side of the bracket if I'm in that tournament. One more team that I do not want to see on my side of the bracket, and they should actually be a pretty high seed, but they are a beatable team. The Creighton Blue Jays have shown they can lose games. In fact, they just lost by 20 this past week to St. John's. But again, this is a team in Creighton. They will live by the 3, and they just might die by the 3. You just have to hope they don't live by it against you. Now, they're not always very good defensively, and that worries me. I'm not saying I'm going to pick Creighton in anything, but if they are on my side of the bracket, I'm worried because if they're hitting shots, you might be in for a long night. They are a top 10 team in 3-point percentage. And here's the thing. They chuck them up a lot. Creighton has shot over 700 3-pointers this season. You just have to hope they don't go in. You might beat Creighton. If you're a better team, you should beat Creighton. But I don't want to see Creighton because they just might tear you up from 3-point land and make you lose a game that you shouldn't end up losing. March Madness is going to be getting started next week. And we always say it here at the Dose. It is the one sporting event that always lives up to the hype. Every year, doesn't matter if there's a good year, down year, bad year, whatever. Every year we see upsets. Every year we see buzzer beaters. Every year we see teams that we didn't expect to get as far as they did. And this year it is wide open. We might see a really fun tournament this season. Remember this. Anyone aside from a 15 or 16 can make the Final Four. Now, that's not my opinion. That's not me talking. That is a statistical fact. Everyone who is not a 15 or a 16 seed has at some point made the Final Four. It can happen. Every year we hear people saying, this team can't make it. This team shouldn't have even gotten in. Why did they even allow this team into the tournament? You think back to teams like Virginia Commonwealth or Chicago, Illinois, or George Mason or Coppin State or even Butler. It happens every year. Now we've just got to see who it's going to happen to this year, but March Madness should be a lot of fun. Now, as we do every week, we need to get to our Daily Dose Top 5. Yes, the college basketball season is winding down quickly as we move toward the NCAA tournament. We'll see who ends up winning that tournament, but let's all be honest. College players have other goals in mind. They're all hoping for one thing. And as much as we want to tell ourselves, oh, they just want to win a championship, that's probably not their ultimate goal, is it? Not for most players. They want another thing. They want to go to the league, to play in the NBA, to get paid to play basketball. So today, our Daily Dose Top 5 is going to take a look at a different type of success in the college basketball world. And that is this. Which programs are actually generating the most NBA players? We think of the top teams in college basketball. Who is getting their players paid? What? No, I'm not talking about at the university. I'm talking about after they leave. Today, we count down the top 5 colleges with the most NBA players in history. Starting off at number 5. And we go to a place that might not be the birthplace of basketball, but it does have a very, very rich history. Because keep in mind that James Naismith himself coached at the University of Kansas. Later, we would see Fog Allen on the bench, who, by the way, had an assistant by the name of Dean Smith on his bench also. Then we had Larry Brown, we had Roy Williams, and now we have Bill Self. And who knows if Bill Self is going to get that program in trouble. But the Kansas Jayhawks have produced 76 NBA players, and they have had some good ones. Guys like Wilt Chamberlain and Paul Pierce and Danny Manning and Joel Embiid and Jacques Vaughn. How in the world has that happened? In the middle of nowhere, Lawrence, Kansas. Well, I would think the fact that they've had some great coaches must have a lot to do with it. And I will say this. I have been to Kansas. That place supports their basketball program like no other. They are crazy back there. They might not have much in Kansas. They have basketball and they love it. Kansas has won 3 national titles. They have a great fan base. Kansas comes in at number 5 on our list with 76 players going on to the NBA. We move on to number 4. And we get to a team that you might have actually thought would be a little bit higher. But the Duke Blue Devils don't always have the most NBA players, as proven right here. The Blue Devils come in 4th with 81 NBA players, a ton of whom have come under current coach and resident grumpy old man Mike Krzyzewski. But Duke does have quite the illustrious history, which is pretty amazing when you think about this. When you think about college enrollment, Duke's is only about 15,000 students. Compare that to, say, Kansas. They're at almost 30,000. Compare that to, say, Texas A&M, who is at almost 70,000 students. Duke has a pretty small pool to pull from. But Duke has had some greats as well. Think back to guys like Shane Battier and Johnny Dawkins, Danny Ferry, Mike Jaminski, Art Heyman, Grant Hill, Christian Leitner, Elton Brand, Kyrie Irving, I guess has to go on this list, JJ Redick, and of course, the latest, Zion Williamson. Not bad for a small school that only has about 15,000 students in their current enrollment. Duke comes in at number 4. We move on to number 3. And we move on to a program that annoys our number 4 entry more than anyone. Because while Duke may have swept the series this year, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill has sent more players to the professional level. They come in third with 94 players. And hey, not only does North Carolina have quantity, but wow, they have quality too. You think back to guys like Michael Jordan. Who? Yes, Phil Ford, James Worthy, Charlie Scott, Sam Perkins, Vince Carter, Bob McAdoo, Bobby Jones, Jerry Stackhouse, Antoine Jameson. The Tar Heels have had some greats on their list. North Carolina comes in at number 3. We jump up to number 2. And yes, we realize that their prime is probably behind them. But you just know the UCLA Bruins had to be on this list. Hey, the run that UCLA went on from about 63 until about 75, it's never going to be matched. John Wooden ran off 10 championships in that era. Yes, I know it was a different era, but the Bruins have also had some monsters that went on to great success in the NBA. UCLA has sent 98 players to the pros, including, of course, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Walton, Jamal Wilkes, Aaron Aflalo. What about Russell Westbrook, Reggie Miller, Baron Davis, Marquez Johnson, Lonzo Ball, Gail Goodrich, Henry Bibby, Walt Hazard, Kevin Love, and Sidney Wicks. That's a pretty good collection of talent there. UCLA comes in at number 2. So, which college basketball program has sent the most players from its halls to the NBA court? And we've already touched on some big time programs, but this one tops them all. And you know, the crazy thing is, this school is still doing it every single year. Because the Kentucky Wildcats have sent 111 players to the NBA. And I'm telling you, they're going to be doing it again this summer. In fact, these days, head coach John Calipari, he actually goes to the NBA draft to celebrate with his players. Well, and also to be seen by all of the recruits that he's trying to pull to Lexington. But the Kentucky Wildcats have an impressive list. Louis Dampier, Cliff Hagan, Dan Issel, Kenny Walker, Sam Bowie, DeMarcus Cousins, Anthony Davis, Tony Delk, Jamal Mashburn, Ron Mercer, Tayshaun Prince, Mel Turpin, Karl Anthony Towns, Rajon Rondo, Antoine Walker, John Wall. There are a ton of talented players that have come out of Kentucky. Kentucky tops our list of colleges sending players on to the NBA. Like I said, I know people are down on this year's class of college players going to the NBA, but I just bet that after March Madness, we're going to start hearing more hype for a few of these players with the NBA draft coming up, because every single year in March Madness, not only do we see upsets, not only do we see buzzer beaters, we also find stars in this tournament every year. Guys that we didn't know, that all of a sudden we're going, that guy's going to be a top 5 pick. It's going to happen again this year. It happens every year. Hey, next week on The Dose, we will be doing our best to keep you up to date with the latest and greatest in the world of sports as only we can. And you just know the world of sports always gives us something to talk about. Have to say thank you to all of you for listening to the Daly Dose every week. Thank you for the emails. Thank you for the texts. Thank you for the tweets. Thank you for going wherever it is that you download the show and leaving us that 5-star review. But most of all, thank you so much for sharing the show. We absolutely love it when you do that. Have to say thank you to JSP. Could not do any of this without you. Have a great week, everyone. I will see you all next Wednesday. Okay, class. Now, after coughing or sneezing or making a poo-poo or a pee-pee, what do we do? Eat paste? No, Jimmy. Go stand in the corner.